Welcome back to Unsolicited Advice, presented by Toxic Bubblegum. I'm Bubblegum,
I'm Toxic.
and today we're talking about world building.
And this episode, because world building is such an intricate thing, and we have so many things to talk about and so many good examples, we wanted to give you a variety of examples so that you could, check stuff out. So we're going to just plan on this being a two-part episode.
Right.
Where this episode, we're going to be talking about world building in media and just, cool stuff that we like.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the bulk of this episode. I
Yeah.
don't think there's going to be a part two. It's pretty much just going to be that. I don't know, because I'm not allowed to look at the notes. I got yelled at when I tried to look at the notes.
I have surprise questions to spring on Alan in the moment.
Which is great. I'm so excited for that.
This is actually just our trivia show.
Oh, no.
Welcome to Unsolicited Advice, the Game of Thrones trivia podcast.
Oh, god damn it. Here we go again.
No, we do have a part two, though. The other episode that isn't us just talking about cool stuff is where we're going to give the advice. So,
right.
If you just want the advice,
go ahead. Go to
don't
that
listen to
bad
this.
boy.
Yeah.
Because we're just going to talk about things we like a bunch, like we usually do in the first part of episodes, as it turns out.
That's going to be the whole part of this episode.
It's good. It's a good part of the episode.
So, quote, I guess.
Yes.
If we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world.
That's by C.S. Lewis.
Nice.
Which everybody knows that bad boy.
Yep.
Bad boy is the key phrase, I think, this episode.
Yeah, I like it. Can we get a picture of, C.S. Lewis in, a biker jacket?
Can he be wearing, a t-shirt that just said bad boys with a Z?
I love that.
Good old C.S. Lewis. Very conservative Christian man. He
He's
fought the
bad
devil.
Boys.
I read that comic where he fought the devil.
Yeah. That's the podcast.
This is the world building we're talking about. Okay, let's jump into it. Let's move on before I have to explain that comic, because I read that a long time ago and I do not remember it.
So we're gonna start with movies, and how this is going to go is I've done some talking points for movies for cultural things that both Alan and I know. So we're gonna talk about one big thing, and then we're both just gonna kind of hop on with other stuff we like.
Right.
That's not quite as well known. I tried to pick well known things for you guys. I tried. An effort was made.
An effort was made, but you know Kat at this point.
Yeah. So
as it turns out.
Whatever. We're gonna talk about the Hunger Games.
Woo! Here we go. I haven't watched the Hunger Games movie in a long time, so
Yeah.
Kat's read all the books, seen all the movies. I've seen the movies up to the big... I saw Mockingjay Part 1, and that was the last one I saw. So,
that's...
for the best.
Fine, I guess. I mean, for what we're talking about, it mostly covers the districts.
Right.
Is, in the capital. I don't think there's anything we're going to be talking about today that is going to be where you would need to know all of them.
Whoopsie.
So yeah, it's really funny also because Alan's the one who took me kicking and screaming to see the first Hunger Games thing.
Oh god, that's such a funny story.
I thought it was gonna be. Yeah, it was. He trolled me super hard because I thought we were going to see the the anniversary of the Titanic. They re-released it in 3D, and Alan's like, "Do you want to go see a movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's playing?" And he's like, "Well, we can go see The Hunger Games." And I'm like, "I'm not super interested in The Hunger Games." And he's like, "Well, we could go see Titanic." But he was being sarcastic, I think, is what happened there.
I was.
But I got excited because I wanted to see it in 3D. So, he picks me up, and we go to the movie, and it was The Hunger Games. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't want to get dragged into any of this teen dystopia nonsense.
And then, all of a sudden...
And then I really liked it. I read all the books.
And then I took Ben to see it also, and
that was one of the best movie-going experiences of my life.
We're all sitting there. There's this theater where you can sit at, tables and stuff, because it's, one of those big, one of those big ones, and so we're sitting at a table, and, one of the, emotional scenes happens, and Ben leans over to me, it's like, next time you want to suggest a movie, you can go fuck yourself. And yet I'm still the one that makes all the decisions about the movies we go to see.
It was so funny. That was, the first movie I'd ever gone to with Ben. That was, outside of a convention, that was, the first social situation I was ever in with Ben. And it's Left such an intense impression.
I mean, that's what Ben does. He leaves
Yeah.
intense impressions. We haven't actually talked about the Hunger Games.
I'm going to talk about the Hunger Games. So one of the reasons why I picked the Hunger Games, I guess the big reason is because I was trying to look at, like, really popular franchises, and I thought Alan would be a little bit more comfortable talking about the Hunger Games than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
That'd be really funny if we told all these stories about the Hunger Games and then I switched it to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, we're on Lord of the Rings now.
Like, I guess I should have asked if Lord of the Rings would have been better.
I know, again, it's been a long time since I've seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
So, Alan's involvement was a big consideration, but also the story is really reliant on the setting and on the world. It's one of the movies, it opens up with exposition about what's going on and how the Capitol starts the Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. And it was, so yeah, it's one of those things, it just ties in together so well with the world.
Right, it's like, it does what, like, because it's a fictional world, like, with a lot of, like, movies that are, like, realistic fiction, like, you can sort of set it in a, like, if you're saying it in modern day, mm-hmm. you need to give a lot less context, like, if you're, like, in a small town, mm-hmm. small town USA, big city USA, or big small town, wherever, in whatever country, like, it's being marketed to, you don't really have to do any world building, because you know that the people live there.
Right.
Like, they're gonna need less world building, because it's just the world they already live in.
Yeah.
But, like, when it comes to, like, a fictional world, or, like, it's like, you need to do a lot more explaining, but you still just have the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Because, like, in a movie, you have, like, the first 10 minutes is where you're supposed to do all your world building, something like that. Which, I mean, like, obviously you can add on later than that, but, like, you have to do the bulk of your world building in those first 10 minutes, because that's, like, all the time you have for exposition before people start getting bored of it.
Right. Which they do. I'd argue that they maybe didn't do enough of it in the movie adaptation of The Hunger Games, because mm-hmm. I missed a lot of points in the movie before I saw the book. Uh-huh. All the points are technically in there, but they go by pretty fast, so you have to be paying really close attention to the beginning of the movie if you haven't read the books. But they get the basic thing. It's one of those things where it's like, the world is so integral to the plot, because if you didn't know anything about the world, and they're just like, here are these 24 kids who are gonna fight each other to the death, you'd be like, what?
What are you talking
about? But the Hunger Games, it talks about the war and about what the Hunger Games is supposed to represent. We get to see the propaganda film from the Capitol mm-hmm. that they show before the reaping. And we get to see how bad the food situation really is in District 12.
Right, which is where our main character is. So it's important that we specifically world build relevant to her, because we have to understand her situation the most. And
they imply that they're, they make a big deal. It's District 12. They imply that there are 11 other districts. They hint that there's more going on in the world, but it focuses on the relevant information, which is how it had to be done.
Right.
And there's also something, I didn't really appreciate how early they get the difference in there between the mm-hmm. Capitol and the districts, but when the peacekeepers come in, they're like these high-tech bodyguards,
right?
And you get to see really early on just how, because you almost could think that it was something that was like set in the past if you're just looking at District 12.
Yeah, because
they're using really outdated technology. Everyone's starving. There's like no kind of communication system. And then when the Capitol comes in, you get to see that there is technology that's ahead of the technology we have today, even in the real world.
Right.
The districts just don't get it, and that's key world building.
Right. That's the kind of world building like we said, is because once you get past that first 10 minutes, that's when you get into that, because you change settings and you're exploring the world with the character, which is key to that world building aspect. is if the character is learning something new about the world, you should be learning it along with them, because that like ties you to the character, which generally you want.
And there's also something to be said for consistency, because the Hunger Games obviously was planned out. There was like a lot of planning that went into the series, but when you watch the first movie, you don't really understand. They're like dropping hints for things in the world that you won't get to see until later down the line. When they are introducing everybody's districts, for instance, there are like hints that are dropped about what each of the other districts is responsible for, and it's like, I thought that was just really interesting, because they talk about it, and they talk about the careers, the career districts being 1 and 2, but you don't really get to find anything out about what they do in that first, other than being careers, other than like training for the Hunger Games, and but the girl who is submitted for that year, her name is Glimmer, and it's like, it's a really subtle thing, because it's Glimmer, and is Kato from District 1, or is he District 2?
I say District 2. Maybe?
I don't know. Anyway,
everything's approximate.
The point is, Glimmer comes from District 1, and then you find out, like, way down the line, that District 1 is the luxury district.
Right.
So it's like, it's important to, and that's like, naming your characters is a really great way to get into world building, because it's like, different areas have different kinds of names.
Right.
And, I feel like there are less common standards for naming people in District 12, because it's just like a coal mining town. But that being said, it's like when you look at Katniss and Primrose, her mom came from the wealthier side of District 12. She grew up like studying herbs and plants, and both of her daughters have been like named after plants, I guess. So yeah, it's like there's a lot of it's when you're building a world, taking stuff like that into consideration is really good just for consistency, but it's also a good way to show the audience your world and like different aspects of it.
Yeah, it's like I think naming characters can be like, it's one of my favorite things to do, like, because it gives, I know, like a crazy idea.
No, sorry, and we can get right back to this. I just realized,
what up?
There's also a Thrash in Hunger Games. We both had, like, in Soldan, we're both playing people with Hunger Games names for unrelated reasons.
How did this happen?
That's so crazy. That's the guy who goes in with Rue, right?
Yeah.
His name is Thrash.
That's so funny. Oh my god, I can't believe we're Hunger Games references. Hold on, we have to stop the podcast. I'm having an emotional crisis. Wow.
Yeah, in one of the Adventures things, we're playing characters named Thrash and Cinna, and neither one of us were making a Hunger Games reference, but that's just how
we were talking about it at lunch, and Kat was like, I need to talk to you about Cinna for, like, costume design, and I was like, so you mean, like, the creative choices we've made? And then it was like, she stopped me, like, 2 minutes later, it was like, I was talking about the Hunger Games Cinna, and I was like, oh, I thought you were talking about your Cinna.
Right. And actually, I did look it up. They are spelled differently.
Okay, yeah, I see. There's an I.
Yeah,
here
I fixed it.
Y.
I fixed the spelling, so we know that it. That's just so funny. I had forgotten that Thrash was a character, and I was like going to talk about character names, and it's like how Thrash is from District 11, and then it's like, wait a minute,
hold on. Ooh.
But yeah, sorry to interrupt you. That was just like a weird realization.
Oh, this is weird. I'm having a hard time here. That's so funny. But back to the naming characters things. Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, naming things in general is one of my favorite things to do. Because it gives, like, a lot of character to something. Like, a lot of the times when after I've determined a character's personality, I'll choose their name. Because I want it to be fitting.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, like, when I'm doing that, I want it to be fitting, but I also want it to fit their culture.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So it's like, I feel like I do a lot of world building before I even get into the characters. Like, sometimes I have them prepared, but I mean, like, it's like, usually the world comes before the character.
Yeah.
Or one character will get named, and then everything will sort of be spawned around that.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So it's... But no, I like names. Names are fun.
Yeah. They'd be a lot of fun.
It's like we have a story. I know we're talking about media right now,
Yeah.
but like we have a story, me and Ben, and like one of the things is like it's like a sci-fi thing. It's sort of Firefly-y, like spaceships and like all that fun jazz. But all the like all like the main vessels that are like government approved are like named after like Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like
so it's very Firefly-esque.
It is. I didn't. Oh, it's a Firefly reference. Fuck.
How the planets are named.
Yeah, that's right. It is
in the Alliance.
Oh shit. We made a Firefly reference. But so we, and then as it goes, like unapproved vessels that have been like stolen are named after different mythologies.
Mm-hmm.
So like our pirate crew is like all based around Norse mythology, and then the character names are also based around that because it's like they really like embraced that as their culture as pirates. Yeah, so like that's just an example of that. It's fun. That's a bunch of. That's my. Those are my pirate brigades.
Nice.
The gay ones.
It's also... I am going to talk just a little bit more about the Hunger Games names, because it's... I also just want to talk about the people in the Capitol. The Capitol people have, like, the best names.
Yeah.
Effie Trinket comes to mind, because I love the last name Trinket.
It's
but
good.
Also, this is what I should have been taking notes on, because Cinna's team, he's got like a team of 3 people, and they all have the most ridiculous names, and the only one I can think of, there's like a Flavius,
yeah,
like, I love that. And it shows their culture too, because even though a lot of their culture comes from external sources, it's very flamboyant, it's very like in your face,
right?
And they have like these long, very colorful names that really reflects that identity, except for, strangely enough, I think like the least exciting name in the whole thing is probably Cinna.
Yeah.
And which is fun, because he's like, he is a costume designer, that's his whole thing.
Right, that's his whole...
But he doesn't get, like, a cool...
No.
ridiculous name. And that was actually, I have a note to talk to you about that, because I wanted to talk to you about art stuff, and, like, how the visuals in the Hunger Games, especially in the first movie, how those, like, affected things, like, what you remember.
Going back, it's one of those things, like, visually, one of the things that always stuck out to me about the Hunger Games was how the Capitol is very, like you said, very flamboyant. There's a huge color difference.
Yeah.
In it. It's, when we're introduced to Katniss and everything, like, it's very gray. Like, all the tones are, like, very muted and gray and everything like that. And so when you see all these people in these really flamboyant clothes, like, they should be, like, rich and colorful, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like, they look wrong.
Yeah.
Like, in the world, because it's, like, in these, like, because when they show up, like, they're in, like, the dudes are, like, in all the white suit, and, like, Effie has, like, she has, like, on the pink one right there, and it's, like, her makeup.
She's dressed in, like, pink and gold when she shows up to the...
But, like, everyone else in the town is wearing, like, gray and, like, rags and, like... So, like, it's almost like there's, like, a filter over her that makes her look, like, wrong.
Right.
And I think that's... I think one of the most things that stuck out to me most visually is the way they, like, juxtaposed the colors with each other. Because it really drove home the idea that, like, of the differences between these two cultures and how they should not, like, they shouldn't be existing at the same time.
And that's something to take into consideration. Why we're talking about so many different things and so many different mediums today is because when you are world building, it's important to include things like that if you're using a visual format, if you're making a movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's the kind of stuff that people will notice.
Right. It's like, I mean, this isn't a Hunger Games, but I mean, like, in, like, Sin City,
Oh, yeah.
like, the color was a big thing there, because it was all black and white, except for the, like, blood and stuff was all, like, that weird yellow stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's, like, the one scene I've seen from Sin City. But yeah, it's, like, and that's how it is in the comic, too, is, like, it's all black and white, except for those tones that get highlighted very specifically. And it's always for a very specific reason. It's, like, one of those things, I mean, like, if you're an art house film or whatever, I mean, like, there are no rules, you can do whatever you want, because that's, like, the point. But, like, if you're telling, like, a story, your colors and symbols are going to be they will have a lot of impact.
And it's also, that's something to be, like, it's something, I was not going to, this isn't one of my talking points, and I still have Hunger Games stuff to get through, but it's something that I want to talk about, too, with the color for Sweeney Todd. Because that was another thing, they had a really drab environment, and the blood, a lot of people complained that it looked fake, but it was very intentionally brighter than it should have been, because it was the color in his life at that time. And there's also, when they do the flashbacks are all very colorful in comparison to the London that we see in the present time.
Right, and it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, they probably also took inspiration from the stage show for it, because, like, that's one of the things they do in the stage show is they don't use, like, actual fake blood. It's like, because they use the cloth instead. And everyone, again, like, the lighting's very drab, everyone's clothes are really dull. But so, when he slits their throat and they pull out these bright red scarves,
they stand out.
It's, like, really, like, the blood means something.
Yeah.
We should talk about Sweeney Todd more. Sweeney Todd's great.
We should. I love Sweeney Todd. But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to talk about in world building, specifically to the Hunger Games, is I wanted to talk about the use of songs, because it had its own songs. And there's the Meadow song, which is the one from the first one, and there's the Hanging Tree. And the Hanging Tree is something that I wanted to talk to you about specifically. I didn't know if you'd seen Mockingjay or not yet, like the first part, when we were talking about this.
We saw it
when
together.
We started talking about this.
You goof.
Did we?
We did.
Oh, that's right. Oops.
I just didn't get to see the second one.
Okay. So the Hanging Tree is one of those, because not only did it had, like, a lot of impact, obviously, in the movies, more so than in the books, even though it's a more ongoing thing throughout the books. It had a really big impact, and it ends up turning into sort of the anthem for the resistance movement, for the propos. Oh, I hate that. I still hate the word propos more than I hate anything else in the Hunger Games.
Wow.
Actually.
That's some intense hatred.
And he's, like, so proud of it, too. He's like, I call them propos. And it's like, don't.
Don't do that.
Just don't. But yeah, so the Hanging Tree was, like, really cool. They were using it for the promos also, not just for the resistance in the film, but they were using it to promote the film, which I thought was really interesting. It was, like, an interesting choice, but...
What's funny
didn't you hear it before you heard, like, the remix that they'd done for the radio?
Yes.
Okay.
That is, the first time I heard it was the remix they did for the radio, and I was like, the fuck, this is jamming. And then I was like trying to look it up, and it was like from the Hunger Games, and I was like, hold on, what the fuck? This was like still in the days where I had to look up songs on like fucking YouTube. I didn't have Spotify yet, I feel like. But like, so I like looked it up, and I was like, what the fuck? Huh? What is this?
And that's something, because music is such a good emotional cue for stuff, if you work original music into your environment, whether that means composing for, like, an audio format or just writing lyrics to stuff and making sure to include it in the written format, because we got all the lyrics to The Hanging Tree even in the books.
Right.
It just wasn't as big of a thing. But it's like, that's a really good way, because if people like the song, they're more inclined to like find out what it means and how it ties into the world, and then they'll do world exploration and whatever you've done.
Right. It's funny, I'm gonna go off topic again. I'm gonna talk about the Adventure Zone again. Okay. Just because you talked about audio formats, that's like fair. For it. like, there's a point where they start composing music, like, Griffin starts composing music to, like, play in the background, and it's all, like, original and stuff like that, and it's, like, it enhances the story so much, because suddenly there's, like, you're not only getting, like, you're not only hearing what's going on, but you're getting more of an atmosphere for it, which I feel like is a really important thing that music does for world building, is it really, literally sets a tone for it, and I don't think there's a better way to improve something than to adding music to it, unless you very specifically leave it out, in which case it can also be just as powerful.
Yeah. And that actually wasn't off topic, because that was going to be that we're done with Hunger Games.
Woohoo! I did it!
Yeah.
Made a transition.
And I have one last movie to talk about. And it's interesting.
I was going to say, this is an interesting note.
Yeah. I want to talk about Saw 3D, the final chapter. And I had a tough time not bringing it up in the middle of the Hunger Games segment, because you were talking about how, like, you didn't have to do as much world building if it sets place in a contemporary setting, which normally is true. But it's important to note that even if you're in a contemporary setting, if your story is something that would affect a bunch of people, you have to do a little bit of world building to raise the suspension of disbelief for the audience. And why I want to talk about Saw 3D, which is the 7th, it's called Saw 3D, the final chapter. It's not in 3D anymore, and
it's
not the
final
last
chapter.
So
it's all a lie.
But there were 6 movies before that, and then 7, the concept was really interesting, and I'm not going to get into why they did it badly, but
we're not going to go back on that one.
They talk about, there's a support group, because the Jigsaw things have been such an impactful thing. So it's like, they get a little bit into other people that we haven't seen in the movies, and what their traps were, and how having a killer doing this has really impacted society. They have, like, the book tour for the guy was, like, one of the main plots of the movie, and there's a support group, and it's like, it's not the kind of world building that we're talking about, but as we're discussing world building, it's important to keep in mind how people would be affected by your story, and how much of a world impact that's going to have. And to adjust accordingly, because Saw 7 needed to do that, because at that point, obviously that's a big deal. And it's like, that really did raise the suspension of disbelief, because it showed that the world had been impacted, and that people were talking about it, and little things like that can go a long way, even when you're working in a contemporary setting.
It's like one of those things where it's like, if it's the first in, like, a series, like, Saw didn't need to do that kind of world building. Like, the first Saw
they didn't need to do
that.
Get into it.
Because at that point, it was still just pretty much the regular world. Like, we had seen Amanda's trap, but that was, again, while we were learning about everything that was going on with the characters. Like, that was the detective, right? He was the one learning. Because there was the detective in there.
Tap?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, but, like, by the time it was 7, like, enough people had been affected by Jigsaws. There was, like, the public trap. That started 7 off.
That's just how they started 7. So it was like, if they had done that and then not explained that it was, like, a worldwide thing, it would have made no sense.
So, like, it's really important, like, if you're in a series that's continuing, like, in every installation, one of the most important things in a series is you have to be able to, it has to be able to stand alone. Because if people will come into it without doing the first one. Like, that's just an inevitability.
That's something that you did.
That's something that I did, yeah.
Like, you saw the first one, but you missed a bunch, I think?
Yeah, well, that was when I was still a baby and had to cover my eyes.
I was also trying to catch you up, because I didn't know that we were going to be doing it, and you went to take me for my birthday, and I had, like, a day to catch you up on.
So we had to watch just the first one, but I was still, like, a little baby. I probably still couldn't watch the 7th one now. I haven't tried to watch 3, but, like, probably still wouldn't. But yeah, you have to be able to condense, like, you have to be able to not bore the people who have already been in the series, but you have to refresh them, and you have to pull in your new audience at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like a very careful balancing act that you have to do.
And, yeah. So, do you have another movie? Do you want to talk about another movie?
I can't think of any movies right now. I mean, like, I just saw Black Panther, which, was really interesting. Like, because they did a lot of their world building, like, they had, like, the animated intro that they did to give a lot of the, like, it gave, like, the history of Wakanda and, like, how all that happened, and how they had sort of developed, like, on their own. So it's, like, you got a lot of the world building just from that.
Right.
And from, like, seeing it from, like, an outside perspective, because it's, like, it does, like, the whole intro, and then there's some backstory, and then when you get to the present day, it's telling you, like, Wakanda is this, like, third world country that's one of the poorest in the world, and all of that stuff like that. And then, so when they finally go in, you have an idea of what to expect, but, like, it's still, like, real good when you finally get to see the world that's been built up to this point. But that's all I can think about right now. I don't remember a lot of things. We've been over this. I'm dummy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's time to move on to television.
I'm gonna move on to television. Ooh. Unsurprisingly, I'm going to talk about Game of Thrones.
Holy shit, dude.
I know. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, I actually want you to start the Game of Thrones thing. I have, one interesting trivia thing I want to get to early on, but I wanted to talk to you, as, from an animation standpoint. What do you think about the opening credits for the show being the map of the world?
I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Because it changes almost every episode. Because it, like, specifically will show you where things are happening that episode, which is great, because there's a lot of places to remember.
Yeah.
But it's also really good because you get, like, a more definitive span of how big Westeros is.
Right.
Because it's fucking huge. I think the one thing, like, the map, like, I didn't get from the intro was every time we went to Dorne, I didn't realize how much of it was, like, because we mostly just see the kingdom, I did not realize how big the rest of that area is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I never got, the span of that, but, like, when it travels all over Westeros, it does a really good job of establishing how big the world is.
Yeah.
From place to place, and, like, which is important, because, like, they make a big deal about how long things take, but I mean, like, obviously you're watching a show. It's not taking 3 months to do something.
Right.
When they say it took, like, 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think it has, one of the most interesting openings, because, like I said, it does change with every episode.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, Westeros being big, actually opens me up to my, like, interesting lore point that I think is interesting, that no one is going to care about but me. But you have to listen to it anyway, because you chose to listen to this podcast. It's the 7 Kingdoms of Westeros. Right? That's, like, a big thing. That's a misnomer.
Really?
There are 9 regions in Westeros.
Of course.
And it is all one kingdom. Actually. So I wanted to
They lied.
I know, that's, like, such a common thing, because they're, like, always referring to it as the 7 Kingdoms, and that's just not accurate. But why I want to talk about this and explain it a little bit is because there is historical reason for it to be called the 7 Kingdoms, and it's interesting in, like, the geography of, like, how it's not just a world that someone built and is like, okay, this is the world we're working in. It's a world someone built and evolved over the last 500 years to have, like, these kinds of misnomers explained canonically in the universe. Which I think, that's, like, top-tier world building. So there are 7 kingdoms, like, 500 years before the show starts. The North, the Vale, the Isles and the Rivers, the Rock, the Reach, the Stormlands, and Dorne. Which, actually, Dorne was not a kingdom, ever. It was a princedom, because they never used kings.
Of course.
Is how that worked. But for the sake of this, there were 7 kingdoms. When Aegon Targaryen conquered everything, and he was in control. He created 2 extra territories. The Riverlands were being held captive by the Iron Islanders. So he liberated them and made the Iron Islands their own thing. That all just used to be the Isles and the rivers. It was one kingdom.
Okay.
So he liberated them and separated the 2. So there were 8 territories. And then he decided that the capital should be its own thing. So he built the Red Keep, and then he took a little bit of territory from each of the lands surrounding it to make the capital city, which is what we know as King's Landing.
Okay.
So like the capital of Westeros is something that Aegon Targaryen created when he united all 7 of the kingdoms. So at this point, it's 1 kingdom, 9 territories, and that's where we start the show at. It's 500 years after that, and all of those territory lines like still exist. So the 7 kingdoms, quote unquote,
are 9
that we
areas.
see in the show are the North, the Iron Islands, the Vale, the Riverlands, the Crownlands, the Westerlands, the Stormlands, the Reach, and Dorne. So it's just like a fun thing though, because like if you ask someone to list the 7 kingdoms and they're counting as they're doing it, they're
like,
gonna get so confused.
Like, wait, what? That's not right.
So yeah, that's just like a fun. I love the world building in Game of Thrones so much.
I was gonna say,
that's
it's like
so intense.
It's very much on par with Tolkien's world building,
and this
which
is just one country out
right.
of several. You know, there are like lots of countries, and yeah, because Tolkien had like this level of.
He had at least 2,000 years.
Yeah,
like probably more, probably a lot more.
There is more. This is just like how Westeros is, because there were actually. It does go back further than that. It goes back, I'd say over 1,000 years, because the first men, like you get into that, and there's also like the Doom of Valyria, but yeah, the Westeros history is about 500 years, from what we'd understand from a recognizable area
standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, it's also very important because, like, so much of the story has to do with the history and everything that's tied into the history. So it's like, when you're doing a story like that, you better bet that your world building needs to be on point, because people are going to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
That you need all the answers to.
Exactly. And it's like, it would have been so much easier to call it the 9 kingdoms.
Right.
Or the 9 regions in this kingdom, but it's like, that level extra of detail really gives something to people who watch the show more than once. My question for you, what region or regions has been the most, you cared about the history for?
The North.
The North?
Yeah.
That's fair.
I mean, I like the North.
That's good.
I wouldn't wear a King of the North shirt because I don't want to die, but I do support the sentiment. No, I think the North is probably the most interesting to me, because they're very different, obviously. I mean, everywhere's very different, but, like, you know, the North is where we start.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the first comparison point we have.
Yeah.
And, like, they're probably the most different from King's Landing out of pretty much all the places we've been.
Except for Dorne.
Dorne.
Because Dorne is technically... Dorne is... in Westeros technically still, but it's not, they run by like a different law.
They basically don't consider themselves part of Westeros.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
out of the official like kingdoms, quote unquote, the North is
right. Like it's like, because they have like the old religion, and like, I mean, the weather is so different up there. Like, they have to have a completely different, you know, set of standards and everything like that.
And I think that there's something to be said for that. There's a tremendous amount of space between the big cities, like between the Keep of the North and any kind of other civilization.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've never really seen a big civilization in the North. We've pretty much seen the Keep and like houses.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It's very hostile. It's also like, because the North is as big as the other 6 kingdoms combined. Is like how they're always describing the size of the North. So yeah, that's a good one.
Like the North.
So you talked a little bit about like the religion.
Yeah.
that's another important thing, is that different worlds, it's very unlikely that everyone in the world is ever going to follow the same religion. So
you sure?
it's important to like take that into consideration when you're doing culture stuff. Game of Thrones is really good about that because they have different religions, and you can see throughout the show that the different religions have different customs. It's not, that's one of the things the show did get wrong, is because when they show northern weddings, they're still like, even though no one in the north follows the seven gods, they do still do the ceremony for the seven gods, and that irks me because they have their own ceremony. But I mean, for the most part, you do get to see it in ceremony,
right?
Like the Dothraki wedding obviously is very different from the being married in the light of the seven, and there's a lot of interesting stuff like that. And the funeral customs are really interesting because in the show, because they keep the customs from the original Seven Kingdoms.
Oh yeah.
So it's like we get to see Brynden Tully dies,
right?
And I would say that's a spoiler, but no one knows who that is. So he dies.
I've forgotten.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
And you get to see they send him down the river. And they catch the boat on fire. They do, like, the flaming arrow thing.
Right, that's, like, the Viking funeral in our world.
And that's how, because they're from the Riverlands. So that's where the Tully funeral customs come from. When someone who follows the faith of the Seven has died, they're buried by the Silent Sisters, and they have, like, the rocks with the eyes painted, like, put over them. And there's also, like, at the Night's Watch, at the Wall, they have, like, a funeral custom specifically, because when you're sworn in to be one of the Night's Watch people, they tell you, you have to swear in, because it's a lifelong position, and your watch starts when you're initiated, and it goes until you die. So at the Wall, when someone dies, the last part of their eulogy is, and now his watch has ended. So that's like a sad thing.
It's like a sad thing.
And the Dothraki burn people.
Right.
And also the Lord of Light burns people. There's a lot of burning people.
There's a lot of burning people in the show. There's a lot of death, as it turns out.
And while we're talking about religion, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about the many-faced god.
Is it because I'm playing a tabletop character who follows the many-faced god?
Yeah.
But I could be able to, like, talk about, like, in detail.
I'm also, I'm curious as to, because I know a lot about the show, and I know a lot about, like, the history for stuff. What draws you to, like, the many-faced god? Was that just a character thing, or was, like, that... Did you think it was, like, the most interesting?
I mean, I think it's the most interesting of the gods. I mean, like, a little bit comes from, like, my personal beliefs, because, like, you know, I have my, sort of unconventional, druid, whatever I'm doing, for religion these days. But I think, like, I've always liked... like, the gods as, like, personifications sort of thing. And, like, the idea of there's only one god and that god is death, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, it's not like the god has control over all these individual things, or, like, many gods have control over all of these individual things. It's, like, God just sort of put us here, and it's just waiting for us to come back.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's pretty interesting about the many-faced god. I also think it's interesting how there's, like, because you've told me that there's not, like, there's, obviously in the show, there's, like, the, whatever the organization is,
the
House of
Black and White?
Yeah, the House of Black and White. And you've told me that, like, that's, like, not the only way to serve the many-faced god.
Yeah.
Like, there are people outside of that serve the many-faced god. So it's, like, one of those things where it's, like, people, like, devoted in different ways. I think that's really interesting.
That's cool. I like that.
That's cool.
That's
I like... I also wanted to play an assassin, so like.
Yeah, class-wise, it's a good choice for an assassin.
She's gonna be good.
Because you can mark people for death.
I'm gonna mark my party members for death. They're assholes.
It's Alan's one-on-one campaign with me.
I'm gonna kill somebody.
That'd be so funny. We would just keep going, I think, at that point for a bit. So Game of Thrones also has, like, really fantastic languages, and this is one of the reasons why we're talking about the show instead of the books, is because they developed full languages for the show. You can buy, like, how to speak Dothraki books, and you can learn Dothraki, and it's, like, a fun, so, like, developing a whole language requires a linguistics expert, and it's hard to do. It's, like, really difficult. But you can allude to languages, which is something that they do when they're not, because High Valyrian isn't a complete it was not a complete language when they started using it in the show. But we got to see, like, we learned that Valar Morghulis comes in. And you get to see, like, little bits of the languages before they're completely developed, which is cool.
Fun.
And even when they're doing just, like, speaking in the common tongue, it's still very atmospheric. You can bring a lot of world building in just through dialogue. And I took a couple of my favorite, a couple of the good examples of this, because these are just, like, things that people say in the world that refer to bits of lore. So, like, a common curse is 7 hells, or when you're threatening someone, there's, like, the 7 save you, which obviously alludes to the 7. Mother have mercy is one of the things, because the mother is one of the 7 gods. Valar Morghulis means all men must die, which it actually, that's a fun thing, because Valar Morghulis comes in, it's derived from High Valyrian, but it's also the same in Braavosi, because High Valyrian would be, like, Latin, like, a bunch of things spawn from it, but it's not as commonly spoken today. So, yeah, Braavosi, that language actually spawns from High Valyrian, so Valar Morghulis is, like, kind of a universal term, and even if you only speak the common tongue, they talk about it.
Right.
And then, like, in Dothraki, they have my sun and stars and moon of my life as terms of endearment, because the Dothraki they believe that the sun and moon are gods.
Right.
Essentially. So that kind of ties in to their worship system. Dark wings, dark words is a common saying, and it comes from, obviously, the ravens that are being used to deliver all the messages and stuff. And then there are also, like, house mottos and house sayings, which, like, winter is coming.
Right.
Like, people say that. And that alludes to the seasons in Game of Thrones, which last for years.
Right, they're, like, so fucking long, dude. Which is weird. But that's how it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, we live in Ohio, so, like, I know all about winter lasting all year round.
So do you have, like, a favorite Westeros? Is there, like, something that stuck out?
I really like Dark Wings, Dark Words. That's always sort of been my favorite one. I do have a funny story about All Men Must Die, because I saw advertisements. This was while I was living in New York, so it was before I came back here and you forced me to watch Game of Thrones.
Of course.
And so, but they had all the promos out, and of course in New York you have promos everywhere. But I didn't know anything about Game of Thrones, so, like, I would just, like, be walking down the street, and there would just be a poster with, like, the 3-eyed raven, and just all men must die, and I'm like, same. But, like, I had no context for it.
Yeah.
But I just, so, I mean, that one has a special place in my heart, because same. But, yeah, I think Dark Wings, Dark Words is always good. I mean, like, I always love that kind of, like, cynicism about
and it's so funny, because that's how all letters are delivered. So it's like, if you see a letter being delivered, you assume it's bad. Which I guess says a lot about the Westeros environment.
I mean, like, yeah. Have you watched Game of Thrones?
Yeah. And, like, the last big thing I want to talk about is they also have a lot of songs that you get to see that allude to the lore and tie into stuff. I like that. There's like the Reigns of Castamere, obviously. Is the big one, because it's the Lannister victory song. So if you hear the opening notes to Reigns of Castamere in the show, it probably means that a Stark is about to go down. Sometimes several Starks.
Sad.
It's also really funny because there's like every now and then they used Reigns of Castamere like one other. I think it was when Tyrion was on trial. They like something bad happened to a Lannister, but like it wasn't the whole family, and they used the Lannister victory song for it, and it's like that's just a little bit wrong.
That's just a little bit fucked up.
But they also have like happier things. They have the Dornishman's Wife, The Bear and the Maiden Fair are both fun songs that you can hear whole versions of, and the Seven is a hymn that you get to see throughout the show. So that's fun. Because people write songs, so it's like a natural thing to include in the world that people would write songs about that world.
And Sharon is there.
And Sharon's there. The song that he sings is a lot of fun also because they wrote it out of the show originally. There's a subplot that would have been in like season 3 where Tyrion is the subplot was still there because he's having an affair with a woman that his father has expressly forbidden him from like having an affair with, and it's so they're keeping it a secret, and a singer has figured it out and writes a song about it, and so Tyrion like they're threatening each other, like the singer's trying to blackmail Tyrion, and Tyrion's like, I'll kill you. Like, Bronn, kill this dude. So it's like, and then he gets the song stuck in his head, and it's like, so he's got the song that was written about himself that could be his undoing, that he's like always humming to himself in like the later books. And so they wrote it out of the show because it was just like too minor of a subplot to have like this nobody singer who dies anyway.
Of course.
But then Sharon makes a cameo appearance to sing it on the show later on. And it's so like, I love that. I was like listening to the lyrics and it's like, I know this song. And then it's like, what?
I was like, oh!
I thought we were past that.
Nope. Never past it.
My last game, do you have a favorite Westeros song?
I mean, like, Reigns of Castamere is the, like, one that I really remember, mostly because it's, like, very notably used in that one scene.
Yeah, in the one scene.
So it's like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I think it's the most memorable.
Yeah.
Because of the impact that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's very crucial to the show.
Right. But yeah, I think that's my favorite.
So, yeah. Now that I've talked about Game of Thrones, what's your favorite, like, world building show?
Show?
Yeah, what's your favorite show in terms of world?
I mean, like, probably gonna go with anime.
That's fair.
Probably. Fullmetal Alchemist? I don't think it's Fullmetal Alchemist. I do love Fullmetal Alchemist.
That's good. The automail makes Fullmetal Alchemist really interesting.
So cool. I think I will talk about Fullmetal Alchemist, actually, because I do love it.
It's a good thing to talk about.
It's, so it's like one of the things where you sort of get this at the end of the first anime, is that and I don't think we really need to label that for spoilers, because when was the last time anyone watched the original anime?
That's fair.
But they very expressly developed that there's like parallel worlds, and like in this one, instead of having like they had the Industrial Revolution, but instead of like taking that and moving on to a technological revolution, they developed alchemy instead, and turned alchemy into an actual science. So that's why we're sort of still in this world where we don't have phones, but like we have like there's radios and like trains and stuff like that. So it sort of stops at the midpoint of the Industrial Revolution, at which point alchemy moved on. And I feel like they established that in the like manga and anime too, like the Brotherhood. I just talked about the other anime, but it's like I think at a point they do establish that the reason is because instead of pursuing technology, they pursued alchemy,
right.
And that's just the way the world developed. but also the automail is so cool. So automail is, in case you've never watched Full Metal Alchemist, it's like, it's prosthetics.
Yeah.
And it generally is metal. I haven't ever seen automail that's different, like different substance than just metal.
I'm trying to think, there was like that one kid that they ended up fighting that had the automail. Was that metal?
Probably.
It doesn't matter.
Honestly.
Guess
I mean, like, there's the one girl, like, from, like, early on.
Yeah.
Who has the automail legs.
Her.
Yeah, no, they're metal. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's
remember.
like an engineering thing. But the thing that's cool about it is because the automail, connects to the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's like a fully functioning thing.
Yeah.
That's prosthetic.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. I think it's one of the most interesting ways that prosthetics have been done, like, in anything, because, again, you have, like, it's like you have full working control over it, but it can be destroyed just like any other prosthetic can.
Yeah.
It just has, like, higher movement capabilities. Though we are developing some pretty cool prosthetics these days.
That's true.
But yeah.
Nice.
It's cool.
That's a good pick, because I really like that. I really like that divergence from our timeline angle.
It's like a very key thing.
I think that's why I liked Full Metal Alchemist more than FMA Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because it's like, even though it had more flaws, it had like a lot of things going against it, but it focused so much on that divergence.
Right. Which, as I understand, is sort of your shtick.
Yeah.
You like that kind of thing.
I do. I think that's good.
It's good. Full Metal Alchemist is good. I like it. It's on Netflix. I should watch it again.
Speaking of things that are on Netflix,
The Good Place.
Watch it.
Good Place is so good.
I'm not gonna say a lot about The Good Place because I would give spoilers, and even though they're everywhere, I would not want to spoil that show for anyone.
Every plot twist in that show is so important.
Yeah.
It's so good.
What I will say about it, because it is in the pilot, I've thought about this very carefully, is that one of the characters is an architect. Mm-hmm. He's like the designer of the good place that we see at the beginning of the show. And it's really interesting as the show's developing, we get to learn more and more about what an architect is. But it's cool not just because that is a world that has been built that's interesting, but because there are also characters who are building their own worlds that are interesting.
Right, it's like literally creating a whole other dimension.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, is what we do as writers.
Yeah,
Anyway.
It's a good show for creators.
It is. It's also just a good show. Please watch A Good Place.
Everyone
it's so good. It's literally so good.
And, yeah. So, moving on to literature, do you want to talk about Alice in Wonderland?
Yay! I'll talk about Alice in Wonderland.
Nice.
Like, all the time. Yeah, so, we're both... Kat's the one that got me into Alice in Wonderland.
I do really like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, you're, like, the whole reason, like, I read the book in the first place. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from that. I have a pretty little one sitting over there on the shelf.
That's nice.
It's the Barnes & Noble's collector's edition or whatever that is. But yeah, it's like, it does... The world of Alice in Wonderland is, like, so important. And I mean, like, the whole book is basically just world building.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing, is, like, you're going through these wild, bizarre worlds with Alice, and you're just sort of... Because she takes it in stride because she's a little kid, you also have to take it in stride.
Yeah.
You don't have time to get, like, hung up on, well, why is this happening? It's like, it just is. Moving on.
Yeah.
Get your butt to the next scene. It's like, ugh. It's real good, and it's, like, it's one of those things where it's, like, it has the continuing plot, but I mean, like, it doesn't, like, isolate itself into, like, a whole overarching thing.
Yeah.
Like, things happen, and then some more things happen, and then some other different things happen, and then other things happen.
Right.
And it's just, like, you get to explore all this, like, bizarre world, but like I say, you don't linger on it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really get time to question it. There's no point where you're like, so what's, like, do I get, like, a history of this place? And it's like, no. No, it exists, and you're there.
Right.
So it's really great. And I mean, like, there's, like, it also has, like, the culture to it, like, because they have their own songs and, like, customs and all a bajillion different things. And, I love it.
Yeah.
It's real good.
It's good.
You have a lot of things written down.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the use of, like, nonsense language. In so Alice in Wonderland, because it's such a nonsensical place, and the language really reflects that.
Right.
The best example, I think, of this is in Through the Looking Glass in the Jabberwocky.
Oh, yeah.
Because the poem just is so good.
Guile and Gimble in the waves.
Yeah. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toad.
It's like, what does that mean? I don't know, but I feel it.
And the mom rats, that were great. Welcome to the Jabberwocky
podcast. I think also one of the things that's really great is because it's a book medium, it really plays into that because it's like there's the mouse's tail.
Yeah.
Which is literally
formatted
in the shape of a mouse tail, and like so by the time you get to the end of the tail, like the text is too small to read, and like the words are like broken up into like single letters, and then you flip the page, and Alice is like, "Your tail's too small. I can't read it anymore."
It really pulls you into the environment.
Right.
Because there's stuff like that where it's like you're seeing kind of what Alice is seeing. And there's that extra level that makes it feel personal. Right.
And then there's also like the Cheshire Cat who like the wordplay is like so good.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like the Cheshire Cat will like ask something and disappear and then like come back for like clarification that doesn't seem like it needed to be had.
Yeah.
But then like go back and it's just back and forth like that. There's also just like one of my favorite, I think, is there's, like, the bread and butterfly.
Oh,
and, like, the rocking horse fly.
And the dog and caterpillars.
Yeah, and it's, like, it's so good.
It's good.
If you've never read Alice in Wonderland, like, it's absolutely, it's so short, and it's such a fun read. Yeah. Like, you can literally read it, like, in an afternoon. Like...
In a golden afternoon?
In a golden afternoon. Disney song. But yeah, so it's like, and it's real fun, because it's just like, and it's got like all the poems, like it's got the Jabberwocky and the Walrus and the Carpenter, and like all those great things. Humpty Dumpty is there.
That's true.
Like, definitely.
Before we move on from Alice in Wonderland, best adaptation, worst adaptation.
Worst adaptation, absolutely, are the Tim Burton ones. Oh, God. I fucking wasted 2.5 hours of my life fucking watching that Looking Glass. It was so bad. It was so boring. Best, is probably American McGee's.
Yeah.
American McGee's Alice is so good.
So good.
I recently found his, like, Kickstarter, like, his Patreon page for the third one, and I'm like, as soon as I have money, you know I'm gonna be there.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so excited.
So good.
But yeah, American McGee's the video game adaptations are so good. And I think that's something we'll get into later. We're talking about it is when you're making an adaptation of something like that big, it again falls in with you simultaneously have to do more and less world building.
Yeah.
With it.
Because you have to make it your own, you have to make it stand out, but you have to stick true to your source material.
Right. We can talk about that because I'm going to talk about Ragnarok.
Nice.
Later on, so.
Alright.
And how about you? How about yours?
Absolutely, American McGee's Alice is my favorite. I love that so much.
So good.
I think my worst, you're gonna be so mad at me for bringing this up, I think it's Alice in Murderland.
Oh God, I forgot that was like an adaptation. I think I blocked out
I think
Alice
it was
in Wonderland.
supposed to be. I'm not sure it was successful, but I think that's why it's my top pick, because you should know whether or not it's supposed to be an adaptation.
That's fair. Like, that definitely was a movie that we watched. You watched it multiple times?
I don't know why I would do that to myself. Because it was so bad, it was so funny.
Oh God, I'm having flashbacks. I'll change the subject.
Alright, so my last literature thing, I have a quote, and there were so many good ones to choose from because I just wanted to talk about it. But we talked about the nonsense language in Alice in Wonderland and how language can affect world building. I think one of the best examples of language affecting the world is A Clockwork Orange, because it's not a different language, but it's in Nadsat, which is slang. It's like very, very heavy slang. And they use that really to sell the world. The narrator is like a big Nadsat speaker, so the whole book is written in this like obscure slang that doesn't, you have like no basis for this. And I really wanted to read a quote, just to get some of the Nadsat in there. I chose a really weird point in the book to do it, but it had the best. I felt like it had like a wide variety.
I was gonna say, I don't know examples.
What is. I'm not even sure if I should explain what's going on in this scene or if I should just read the quote.
It's up to you.
What are you thinking?
Do
you want context for this?
I don't know if I do.
Okay. It's masturbation.
Okay.
I just said it anyway.
You did just say it.
So, yeah,
I
but the
had
quote,
a feeling.
Instead of saying, like, and then I masturbated, he's, like, describing it, but he's doing it in Nadsat, which makes it weirdly less awkward, and the quote is, Then brothers it came. Oh, bliss, bliss in heaven. I lay all Nagoy to the ceiling, my Gulliver on my rookers on the pillow, glazzies closed, rot open in bliss, slooshing the sluice of lovely sounds. It was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh. And it's like, that's like the weirdest way to talk about pleasuring oneself that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's how the book is written. The whole book is like this.
It's like, oh god.
And it's so weird, because by the time you finish Clockwork Orange, you almost feel like you speak a different language.
Mm-hmm. Because, like, you know all the weird terminology.
Right. It's like, you don't really expect to ever be using the word Gulliver.
Yeah. It's like what? What?
So that's just a fun thing. That language helps with world building.
It does. If you're in a world that speaks a specific language, like...
And it was such a big risk to do that for the narrator also.
Right, because, like, you don't have a choice there.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna be using it. There's no time to have, like, a introduction at all.
Of course not. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Comics? Graphic
Comics.
novels.
So, the first one that comes to mind for me is Monstrous. I really like Monstrous. It's set in a, like... a fantasy world where there's, I should go grab my copy, actually, so I can have, like, the actual words. It's here.
While you're doing that, I'll knock my Bizenghast point out of the way real fast.
Dude, yes, I love Bizenghast.
Bizenghast
I never finished it.
Great, and it's a good example when you are doing, again, working in a visual format, it's really important to make sure that the art style reflects the world that you're trying to show. Which I think is that was like Bizenghast's strongest area.
Oh yeah, the art is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like, it's so, very distinct, while it draws a lot upon that, anime style that, like, she was very inspired by. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, the author is also so nice. Like, she's so sweet. Do another one.
Okay.
Do another one while I'm...
The other thing I want to talk about, again, and how world building can apply to nonfiction, Mouse is a really good example of that, because it's a nonfiction story, but it's very stylized as they're going through these events. And one of the reasons, like, there are different animals used for, like, the different groups who are involved in this.
Like, right, the different, like, the Jews are mice, the Germans are cats, the Polish are pigs, Americans are dogs.
Yeah.
Are the big ones.
And it's fun, because Mouse also has, like, information in there about, like, coming up with the concept and stuff, and Art Spiegelman gets into a thing with his wife, because he doesn't know what to draw her as, because she's French.
Right, and she's like, draw me as a mouse. And he's like, but you're French. And she's like, I married you.
Yeah.
So I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
But, Mouse is so good. Like, I love it a lot. Like, I've sung Mouse's praise before, and I will continue to sing them for forever, probably.
That's good. So those were my 2 comics graphic novels points. Do you want to talk about Monstrous?
I do want to talk about Monstrous. I didn't find the term I was looking for. But so, it's the Arcanas, is what it is. So, in Monstrous, it's one of the most unique things about it is it's set in a world that's entirely matriarchal, which is such a divergence, from, like, where we live.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's all patriarchy. And it's, like, one of the things that they really set out to do with this was to make it a matriarchal society and focus on, like women characters and, like, the way that, like, without the burden of being in a misogynistic society. Like, because that, like, definitely has its place, and, like, but this is a fantasy world.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're gonna have, like, mostly women characters, and they're gonna fight just like male characters would in any other series.
Yeah.
And so, like, very early on in the first, you learn that, like, there's, like, was a big war between, like, humans and then the, Arcanas, who are, like, furry people. There's, like, full animal and, like, half animals, and there's, like, demons, and there's, like, all these there's all these different groups. But it's, like, the humans were, like, they're too dangerous, we have to, like, and they, like, win at it. And the Arcanas lost. So, like, they live in this really tense society, and we first see our main character being brought in as a slave, like, to be sold.
Right.
To the witches, who are, like, in charge of a lot of stuff. But it does a lot of really great world building with, like, while still moving the plot forward.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, it does smaller flashbacks between everything, while still pushing us constantly forward, because you don't really have time to think about anything, because there's a lot of fighting.
Right.
That goes on. It's also one of my favorite things is they have all the cats in it.
That's important.
And it's like the cats are very specifically, like, they're information keepers. Like, at the end of every chapter, you have a lesson from Professor Tam Tam, who is a cat who's teaching a bunch of kittens, like, about the history of the world. And it's like, that's just another, like, thing they add, like, at the end of the chapters. Like, you don't necessarily need all the information that Professor Tam Tam gives you, but it really helps to, like, expand the world. And it's really great. And, like, even, like, cats, there's, like, a stigma against cats. Like, because they're the information keepers and they're sort of known for being deceiving. So it's like a whole different sort of prejudice against them.
Yeah.
But it's great. It does a lot of really good world building. Very, very quickly and very efficiently.
That's important.
I like it.
Important to have.
I'm a fan of it. I wish Volume 3 would come out faster, but it won't.
It would be nice.
Sad. I'm sad.
You sound so sad.
I am sad. But yeah, so that's mine.
Nice.
That's mine that I wanted to do.
That's good.
Is it time to move on to games?
Yeah, I think it's time to move on to our last
Games.
which is games. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
do you want me to go first? Do you want to go?
do you want to talk about, we can talk about Alice, since we talked about
yeah, that's good.
Alice earlier. We can swing back around to that.
All right. That's a good example of adapting a world and making it your own while sticking true
To the original.
yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, like, the first thing that happens, like, in the original is Alice falls down the rabbit hole. But we get her exposition first about, she's in mental care.
Yeah.
After her family died. And all of that. So we know there's, like, a greater mystery there with that. But the very first thing she does is she falls down the rabbit hole and she finds a white rabbit. And, like, as you're chasing the white rabbit, like, you very immediately get a sense of how dark and grim the world is. And then very quickly also the Cheshire Cat tells you that it's in your own mind. So it's like we've sort of got an idea of what Alice has gone through and what what kind of state it's put her in.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you get to see her work through all these things that, like, that used to be so nice.
Yeah.
Which I think also really comes through in the second game.
Yeah, that's something to be said. Again, it's that extra layer, because everyone is so familiar with Wonderland, and getting to go through and see, like, these really dark changes and how it's affected the environment is really what makes the world so interesting.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that Madness Returns does specifically well.
Yeah.
Because she's, like, in care and she thinks she's getting better. So when we go back to Wonderland, like, it's so different than it was in the first game.
Yeah.
Like, it's so very, very different. Like, it seems like everything's fine. Like, it's way more colorful. Like, there's a lot more, like, happy creatures there. And then, like, we're starting to see more of the enemies. And then everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that things are not
great.
good. They're bad, I would say. But it's also cool because that also has the juxtaposition of being in a fantasy world versus being in the real world.
Yeah.
Because is that like a spoiler that's not really a spoiler for the second game, really. That is like...
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it is, because that's kind of like the premise that's
like
opening to the...
It's like she's hallucinating Wonderland.
Yeah.
Like, it's like she passes out when she goes to Wonderland, right?
Yeah.
And like, or sometimes she's up and about, but not always. So it's like we're in like London, like bad London of like whatever time period, like the 1800s. And I mean, like, it's a bad place to be. So we're simultaneously seeing what's going on when she's like awake, and then how it's manifesting in Wonderland and how that affects the Wonderland that she and we used to know.
Yeah.
So it's real good.
It's good.
It's a good game.
And the original also has just like such fun tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they both do. I like them more in the original overall. Yeah. But yeah. American Mickey's Alice, Madness Returns, good games.
They're real good.
World building.
I feel like they got really underrated.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't get the recognition they deserved, and should change that.
Absolutely.
I want the third one right now.
That would be really nice for me. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, and then you have some. Also, you have some other ones.
Yeah, I want to talk about Grim Fandango.
Ooh.
Because it's fantastic. It's one of my platinums.
Ooh, fancy.
I guess actually Madness Returns is what started me on platinum.
Yeah.
I got it just because I wanted to play through everything in the game because I loved it so much, and then I got that platinum and it's like, I like this feeling. I want more of this.
Well, and then you got into it with your boyfriend.
That's also true. Because I have, at this point, 12 times the amount of platinums he does, but he's like 5 million levels higher than me on PSN.
Lame.
Because I've only played like 12 games.
That's not true. You're a liar.
It's not true. But I do play like a very low percentage of games.
Comparatively.
Yeah. Or at all, because I have to go platinum hunting,
That's
like,
true.
all the time. I'd say about half of the games I play, I decide I need the platinum in, and I'm not good at video games, so it takes a long time for me. But Grim Fandango's, I think, my most recent platinum, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's, like, the last game I got 100% on. I really like it, because the concept is so fun, and the way that they execute it is just fantastic, because it's the land of the dead, and you are a travel agent, because you just have to get people to the afterlife.
Right.
You're in, like, kind of a limbo situation, and it's such an interesting concept, and getting to see the land of the dead, where this is, like, the premise is just so good. Purgatory is having to work in this limbo before you can move on. And it's like, it's so fun because they have a class system in Grim Fandango, but it's based off of how good you were in your life. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you're a really good person, you can get the number 9 ticket, which is essentially where they put you on a train and it takes you right where you're going. And but you have to, like, sell people these packages to get them wherever it is they're supposed to go. And it was just, like, it was a really interesting thing. It derails from that premise really fast.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a
'Cause,
game
like,
if it stuck to it.
Your first sail gets screwed up, and then you just go on, like, this crazy random series of adventures trying to sort that out. But that's really interesting. And the other thing that I thought was really cool about Grim Fandango and why I decided to talk about it is because it's limbo. So you can't die. Like, you can't be murdered. But they do have an equivalent of that, which is called sprouting. And that's where you never make it to the afterlife.
Aww.
Because, essentially, your body just goes, and it, like, goes in to feed. And it's so sad, but when you see it happen, it's, like, really beautiful. And it was just an interesting, you know, because you, like, literally sprout, you turn into flowers, and it's like, you're just gone. That's what
it is.
It is. If you get murdered in limbo, that's the end of it for you. And it's like, so it's like a really frightening concept, but they went about it in such a unique way, you know?
It's like, that's one of the great things you can do with world building, is you can take something that's horrifying and make it into something that's not.
Yeah.
Like, something that can be so scary can be beautiful. Like, which is, I mean, like, death is one of those concepts that always gets reimagined, because it scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, like, some people want to, you know, help it make it less scary. Which is one of the great things you can do.
Yeah.
It's always nice. I think... For my next one, I think I'm going to talk about Diablo, because I love
that's a good one.
Diablo a lot.
It's one of my platinums.
It's one of your platinums. So, like, the world of Diablo is, like... It's weird, because I don't know a lot about the history. I mean, like, obviously I know the big point.
Yeah.
Which is Diablo is there, and was there, and then was not there, and then was there again. But, like, it's one of those things where it's, like, you do get to see, like, all the different cultures that are around.
It's something they got into a lot with 3, because when you're going through 3, particularly Act 5, where they're talking about... Because, like, each character class has a different personality. They come from a different background with different customs. And when you get to... when you're, like, leading up to the fight with Malthael, you can talk to spirits of people from your past. And it gets a lot into the culture, I'd say more than the other 2.
Right, it's like, because, like, in Diablo 2, I mean, like, there was a lot of, like, you definitely went to, like, because you went to all the different places, like you do, but you never really learned, I don't want to say learn too much, but I mean, like, you never really get invested. It's like, you're there to fucking
You're there for the gameplay.
You're there for the gameplay. You're there to kill some demons. But, like, it doesn't, like, I get a very distinct feeling, like, whenever I see, like, the home screen for Diablo 2. Like, I immediately get back into that world where it's like...
Yeah.
Even if I don't know everything, like, if I don't know all the details and stuff, I don't care, because the world feels good to be in.
Yeah.
And it feels good to progress through it. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, it has a lighter world building than a lot of the things we've talked about, but it's still effective. Like, it's still...
Oh, absolutely.
Legit.
It's very effective. And it's also a function in Diablo 3 where when you kill a new enemy, you get the lore.
Right, you get the lore books and everything.
You can go back and read through, like, the history of stuff. And you can, like, collect journals and stuff from the people who died in, like, previous arcs.
And there's, like, so many. Like, trying to find all the lore is, like, you're literally exploring every nook and cranny. And even if you do that, you might not find everything.
Yeah.
Like...
There's no guarantee. I'm trying to think. I'm at, like, 60% of the achievement completion on the PC, and it's like, I still don't have most of the lore.
It's hard. It's hard to get. Especially because, like, I mean, like, if you're playing, like, on certain modes, like, or, like, if you leave the act and come back, there's always a chance that map's not going to be there.
Right.
Like, it's going to be a different spawn of the map, probably.
Yeah.
Which is also one of the fun things, though. I like that it randomizes all the maps and everything.
Yeah.
Because it's still the same place, but it's different.
There is something to be really filling though. That's the one area that I don't like because as much variety as the random maps changes you, there was something so satisfying about getting to the end of a Diablo 2 game and knowing that you knew everything.
Oh yeah,
in
absolutely.
That world. Like I loved that.
Like yeah, because when you went back in Diablo 2, like the map was still there. If you had explored the entire thing, it was still there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Did 3? I haven't played 3 in so long, and I'm so sad about it. 3 still had the map that went over you, right? Like you would still, could you still see the map? Yeah, that's what I thought.
That was not nearly as effective.
I was gonna say it did not leave as much of an impression on me as the map in 2 did because I knew everything on the map.
Yeah.
The funniest thing about 2 was still that first time I was playing through it, and one of the important world building things to get you through the game is when you're going to Tal Rasha.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book that you're supposed to read, like, after you kill him, which is, like, there are the 7 tombs of, Tal Rasha. Only one of them is correct, and it's the one, like, with this pattern on it. I didn't read that the first time I went through the game, but I still I still got it the first time. Like, I just charged right ahead, and I was like, here I am. And I had no idea until the second time I was playing through the game that I was like, oh shit.
I also didn't read that the first time through, but I did not find the correct thing.
That's so sad.
That act took me longer than all the other ones combined because I was just wandering around like an idiot. I had no idea.
It doesn't help that the Act 2 boss in 2 is so hard.
Yeah.
He's fucking a nightmare. Is it fucking Duriel? Is that his name?
I think so.
Fucker. Goddamn weird bug man.
Who's like the worst boss from Diablo 3?
3? Fuck.
Or Diablo 2, I guess.
I mean, Duriel, obviously. I don't know. Mephisto's pretty bad.
That's fair.
In 3. 'Cause, like, the layout of the map is so weird, and it's so much, like, trying to get places.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't help that I played a monk, so I had to be close to him, but, like...
Yeah, that never helps.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think Duriel and... It was Mephisto in 3, right?
I think so.
Right? I feel like he's the... Was that him?
Maybe not.
Or am I thinking of 2 still?
That might be 2, actually.
Fuck. Hold on. Let me... go ahead and talk about your thing while I determine what the worst Diablo bosses are.
I'm gonna say also, instead of talking about my thing, I'm gonna say I think my least favorite, like the hardest Diablo boss for me,
It's Duriel!
I was about to say it, and then it was like, wait a minute, because I was gonna say that it was Asmodan, but...
Oh, Asmodan's pretty bad.
Because he does the most damage, but I think it might be Belial, because I usually play as a demon hunter. I used to usually play, now I'm like necromancer all the way.
Right.
But before that, I was playing as demon hunters, and it's like, it's hard to dodge all that stuff. I would like use up all of my discipline going through vault attacks.
Oh, God.
And then I would be stuck, and like the meteors also, maybe I'm a little bit skewed, because right now I'm playing on like Torment 11, I think.
That would do it.
But just about anything in the Belial fight can one-shot you, and there's like not a good place to dodge to where you can still attack. It's not a good... Because the area of combat is so close, it's not designed for, like, long-range fighters.
Right, it's, like, really designed for, like, close range. It's like, that's not good. Can you please just give me a regular list? Mephisto is Diablo 2, by the way.
Oh.
I was wrong. Yeah, I was thinking of 3, I was thinking of Asmodan, actually.
Asmodan it's so weird, because it's like, my first run-through of the game was like the first week that it was out. And
oh yeah, we were done with it so fast.
So much since then. So, But I feel like Asmodan still does the most damage.
Yeah, I feel like he does a lot of... I can't remember if he does a lot of kiting, but I feel like he just sort of wails on you.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, that's where
And he also summons other stuff to wail on you. Like,
and it's like, hey, fucker, you're a coward.
That being said, I do die more in the Belial fight than just about everything else. When I'm playing at a high torment level.
That's also the Act 2 boss. What's with these Act 2 bosses?
They're hard.
God damn
Hard
it.
to do. So yeah.
I do think the Diablo fight in Diablo 3 was also pretty difficult. I feel like it was more difficult in 2. But I feel like the bosses are pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Actually, welcome to the Diablo podcast, where we just talk about Diablo all the time.
I would be fine with that, I think. I don't know what to say about Diablo.
Can we have
Season 13 is so bad.
I want to play again, but I don't want to play Thursday DD.
Well, you don't have to play a season.
Yay.
You can just, like, play the regular game.
Yay.
But you do want to play a season, though.
But not this one.
I mean, you can play this season. This one's my fault, because I'm trying to finish out my Crusader achievements, and they're the worst class. So I did this to myself for Season 13. That was so dumb. But yeah, Diablo.
Diablo's great.
Good world building.
I love it.
And the last game that I wanted to talk about was Don't Starve.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really like about it, because it's like a fun little survival crafting game, and they put their own spin on everyday things, so they're like recognizable to you, but they're slightly different, which I think just is a quirky way that to do world building, and it really fits the tone of the thing. And I wrote down a couple of examples because I knew I was going to forget them. Gobbler, Mosling, Co-Elephant, and Catcoons are like 4 of the mobs, and it's like, those aren't things.
Those aren't things.
But you see them and you're like, oh man, that's a weird looking turkey, or like, it's a messed up elephant. Like, you know what they are, but they're just slightly different for the world, and I think that's really...
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about, like, minimal world building. Yeah. It's like a world that's similar but very different.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of the most effective world building when you're trying to create something that's like paralleling things while also taking them in a radically different direction.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's good. Don't Starve is good.
I want to get Oxygen Not Included. Like, that's the one that I really want to do because it's finally out, but I don't think it's available on Mac yet. I mean, I shouldn't run it on Mac anyway because Mac is not good.
It's not an ideal gaming device.
It doesn't like me.
So yeah, if you want to study world building, like with anything that we have ever said on this podcast, find something you love. Get into the world. Figure out what makes it... When you start picking apart worlds, it'll teach you the skills that you need to create your own.
You know what we should have talked about with games is FNAF.
We should have done that. Let's do it now.
Let's do it now.
We're, like, running crazy long for the first part of a 2-part episode, but I don't care.
I don't care.
I want to talk about FNAF.
Yes.
You're right.
FNAF is one of those games where all the world building is done in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all of it. So much of it is picked apart by fans and put together.
The storytelling, in general, is also done, like, in the background.
Right. It's very much, like, you're focused on the gameplay, but I mean, like, in the backgrounds of the establishment, you have all the posters, and you get to see all the different things, and it's like, you get the phone guy calls that, like, don't make sense at first, and then, like, you're slowly, once you have all of them, you can sort of put them together. And I mean, since it did wrap up the majority of the series, because Scott did say if he was doing it again, he would hand it over to a more professional developer to do it. But so, it's like, it does such a great job of world building, like, and again, it's in a parallel world to ours, but, like, the main difference is there's this Fazbear Entertainment, which is, like, this big Chuck E. Cheese type place, but, like, all these things have gone horribly wrong, but, like, it doesn't need to build, like, a whole world where you have to know the society and everything, because you do.
Yeah.
It's exactly like it is, but these horrible, horrible things have happened.
Exactly.
And
yeah. That's a really interesting one.
I think it's interesting because, like, clearly Scott has put a lot of thought and effort into how everything is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he knows exactly what's going on, but he gives us such selective information.
Yeah.
That, like, it really, like, he gives us the information and then lets the fans figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, I know it, but I'm not gonna spoon feed it to you. I'm just gonna let you look at it for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
It's good.
That's good.
That's a good way. I would argue almost that pushes it too far. I think there's a rule where it's like, you should not spell everything out for your audience. You should make them work for some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That one really goes above and beyond with that concept.
Right.
And it's also interesting to just, here's my opinion on this, is the best world building definitely comes from the, like, there are great examples of world building in the games, but reading the books is like a list of how not to do stuff. That's like the exact opposite of that.
Like, it should be working as supplemental material, but it's just sort of like, this is weird.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable. I haven't read the books, and then I've been told to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I'm not through the second one. I don't know if I'm gonna bother.
Finish it. It's okay. We'll still have the games.
Yeah, the games are good.
That's what matters.
Important.
But yeah, so that was our little FNAF section.
Yeah.
Because we like FNAF.
It's good.
Turns out.
And those are our mediums. That's like a pretty good variety, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a lot of there.
Mostly mainstream stuff.
There's a lot to check out. All these things should be really easy to get your hands on. If you don't, I mean, like, you can look up stuff, like, easily. You can just Google it to find a copy of it if you don't have it, like, at your library or whatever, you know. So, check them out.
Yeah.
Check out all, like, depending on what you're world building for, you probably want to go for something in that genre to see how it's done.
And, you know, make sure to get, like, a couple different examples, because people still have, like, strengths and weaknesses in world building.
Right, there's no perfect world builder out there.
Yeah.
Like, there are some people that have done some really great work, but there's always a different way to do it.
Yeah.
You know. And I think that's about it for the whole
world building media.
World building. So, yeah. Part 2 is going to be all about advice and, like, our experience with world building. And
we're going to talk about tabletop games, and it's going to be fun.
It's going to be good. But yeah, so for now, this has been Unsolicited Advice. I'm Bubblegum.
I'm Toxic.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.